Qatar will host an emergency summit of Arab and Muslim countries in the coming hours to discuss a response to last week's Israeli airstrike against Hamas in the Qatari capital. Speaking ahead of the summit, Qatar's Prime Minister said his country would not tolerate any violation of its sovereignty and that it was, quote, time for the international community to punish Israel for all the crimes it has committed. The meeting comes after a weekend in which more than 40 people died in Israel's Gaza offensive. Israel is warning residents of Gaza City to evacuate to what it calls a humanitarian zone in the territory's south.
Among the ruins of Gaza City, Israel's strikes are intensifying. Its ramped-up offensive, which it says aims to eliminate Hamas's final stronghold, has destroyed multiple buildings in recent days. Now it's warning civilians to leave before more soldiers are sent in. While many have left, hundreds of thousands are estimated to still be in Gaza City.
We went to the south and came back from the south because there's no room there either. Now we're just sitting here under God's mercy.
Hopes for an end to the fighting in Gaza took a massive hit last week when Israel carried out a strike on Hamas leaders in the Qatari capital, Doha. Qatar has been instrumental in negotiating an end to the conflict and is now hosting an emergency summit with leaders from Muslim and Arab countries to decide next steps.
It's time for the international community to stop applying double standards and punish Israel for all the crimes that it has committed. Israel should understand that its genocidal wars that target our brotherly Palestinians with the goal of uprooting them from their own land and displacing them will not succeed no matter what Israel says.
Qatar and Israel are both key allies of the United States. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio met with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Sunday, presenting a united front.
Under President Trump and Secretary Rubio and their entire team, this alliance has never been stronger.
Qatar has said it remains committed to working with Egypt and the United States for a ceasefire in Gaza after nearly 2 years of war.
Let's bring in Tania Krämer, our correspondent in Jerusalem. Tania, the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio will be meeting with both the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu and the Israeli President Vataux today. What are his priorities for those meetings?
Well, the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, has said already he wants to get some clarity from the Israelis as to their next steps and how they move forward. And certainly high on the agenda is the fallout of this Israeli strike on the Hamas negotiating team in Doha in Qatar last week, a country that has been heavily invested in the ceasefire and hostage deal talks, but also strike obviously on a sovereign country and where the US has military assets. Now, apart from this, they will most certainly talk about the planned Gaza invasion, Israeli invasion of the western parts of Gaza City. We understand from sources here in Israel that the army has finished its preparations, that the ground operation could begin any time soon. So we understand that Rubio certainly also wants to see what is the plan here. But that has, of course, devastating consequences for civilians in Gaza. There have been heavy airstrikes in preparation for this. People we talk to say they don't really know where to go. Some of them are hunkering down. They don't want to be forcibly displaced again. Some have left Gaza, but many say nowhere is safe. And another topic on the agenda certainly is the upcoming or possible recognition of some Western countries of the state of Palestine during the United Nations General Assembly next week. And of course, Israel's response to that. We've been hearing from government officials, from ministers here, that they are considering to formally and fully annex the Israeli-occupied West Bank.
Now, all this is happening while Arab and Islamic leaders are preparing to meet in Qatar to discuss Israel's strike. Tania, is Israel concerned about what might come out of that?
Well, there has been a widespread condemnation from Arab countries here after the strike. The reading in Israel is that there will be no major actions taken as of now. Of course, we have to wait and see if this reading is accurate. But basically, they acknowledge that, relations with some of the countries, at least it has diplomatic relations with, especially also those under the Abraham Accords, like the United Arab Emirates, those relations are certainly strained, and they're important to Israel when it comes, for example, for its defense shield in the region. Having said that, there are many other topics that are really important for regional leaders here. It's the war in Gaza, obviously, and all these talks about possible annexation of the occupied West Bank. But for Israel, I think it is very important to have, this support, the show of support of the United States here in form of this visit by Marco Rubio here while those leaders are gathering. And of course, we also heard frustration from the Trump administration. US President Trump had said after the strikes he was very unhappy with it. He said on Sunday again that Qatar is a great ally. But still, for Israel, it's most importantly that the US is standing by its side and that it also doesn't expect any pressure from it to change course.
Tania, thank you very much. That was our correspondent, Tania Krämer, in Jerusalem. Let's get some analysis now from Mohammed Sinan Siyech. He's a lecturer in international relations at the University of Wolverhampton. Thanks for joining us. Mohammed, are you surprised that Secretary Rubio chose to go to Israel instead of Doha?
Not exactly, no. I mean, because of how close the US and Israel is in general, it's not very surprising to note that, yes, during a time like this, they would try to go ahead and diffuse some of the tensions, maybe in Israel. It could be, and we don't know what's happening behind the channels or here, behind the scenes, but it could also be that they are trying to ensure that Israel does not repeat any other such sort of attack in like any of the GCC nations, whether it's Qatar or, anywhere else in the Gulf, right, for that matter. So it does not come to me as a huge surprise. Maybe it's a little bit unexpected, but not. It does not completely go off the trajectories of what the US would normally do in these situations.
Now, earlier, President Trump reassured the Emir of Qatar that this sort of attack by Israel will not happen again. Is that likely to satisfy Qatar?
Not exactly, no. I think when you're thinking about Qatar right now, I mean, there has always been a calculus over the last 50 years or so, since 1970s when the GCC nations came into existence as nation states, that the US was a security guarantor, and as long as these nations, complied with the US, there was no fear of them becoming targeted especially by Israel, right? Now, the moment this attack happened, there has been a change in calculus, and because of that, I'm pretty sure at this point that most of Qatar as well as the other GCC nations are going to be, a lot more cautious about accepting any security guarantees from the US, and there will be a push towards moving towards a more diversified defense strategy, especially because of the way Israel is now acting as what most actors would classify as a rogue state within the region.
Qatar's Prime Minister has called for Israel to be punished over the strike, accusing it of state terrorism. Do you think this summit in Doha will back that demand with real consequences?
So the main thing that the summit can actually do is that they will go ahead and, file complaints maybe with the UN, maybe with some of the international bodies that exist, which may or may not have severe consequences, at least in the short term. I don't think there's any actual chance of military escalation over here because the capacity of these nations, especially Qatar, is not as strong as, let's say, Israel, right? And they do not have that battle readiness the way a country like Israel does. However, in the medium to long term, I'm quite sure that you will see a lot more, maybe more soft power approaches being taken. For example, Al Jazeera, being more active over time, or even Qatar working with maybe lobbying groups within Washington to ensure that these sort of steps are reduced and minimized as much as possible. So to what extent consequences are going to take place, I would say that at the moment you could say it would be more minimal, but over the medium to long term, that it could increase. And that's something that we've seen even before where, for example, during the blockade of Qatar by the other GCC nations, it actually managed to diversify a lot of its food imports, for example, and it managed to, over a long term, managed to achieve some level of self-sufficiency. So this sort of, self-sufficiency is something that Qatar will try to achieve maybe over the next 4 to 5 years or so, at least.
If this summit of Arab and Islamic countries sends a strong message but does not follow up with action, how will that be seen in the region? Is Arab credibility at stake here?
I don't think so. What's interesting to keep in mind over here is that everybody within the region, most of the big actors within the region know that a country like Qatar, a country like the UAE, and even for that matter, Saudi Arabia, do not have the strongest armies, do not have experienced armies that have actually fought in wars, as opposed to, let's say, a country like Egypt or even Syria, for that matter, if you're looking at from the 1950s onwards, right? So in terms of credibility, there had to have been some level of military experience to have garnered that level of credibility. The fact that a lot of credibility in these countries actually came from their engagements with the US and their and the US guarantee as a security provider to these countries is what has maintained peace within these countries, right? Especially the GCC is what I'm talking about. So to say that, would there be a loss of credibility in this place, is there had to have been that level of strength in the first place. None of these countries ever went ahead and said that we are the strongest military powers in the region and nobody can come and attack us over time. So that's something to keep in mind when we're talking about what does credibility over here mean for these countries.
Mohammed, thanks you very much for your insights. That was international relations expert Dr. Mohammed Sinan Siyech.
Thank you.
As we reported earlier, more than 40 people died in Israel's Gaza offensive over the weekend. Israel is now urging residents of Gaza City to evacuate to what it calls a humanitarian zone in the territory's south. Well, for more, let's bring in Jean-Guy Vataux. He's head of mission for Gaza with Doctors Without Borders and joins us today from Amman, Jordan. Thanks for being with us. Mr. Vataux, how would you describe what life is like for the residents of Gaza today?
Well, for the population living still in Gaza City, it is hell. You reported it, the Israeli military intervention is getting more intense, the number of strikes is increasing. Some people, minority, has left Gaza City to go to the south where nothing is ready for them. There is no shelter, not enough water, not enough food. And the ones who don't have the means to leave are still stuck in Gaza City, which is a very dense war zone at the moment. And they're just stuck praying, as you reported, for their God to spare them. That's the situation now in Gaza City.
You mentioned the intensified Israeli strikes. How are those strikes in Gaza affecting your staff on the ground and their capacity to help Gazans?
Well, the Gaza is the most dangerous place in the world for humanitarian action. A lot of people died and have been wounded. We still have teams in Gaza City for the moment, providing healthcare to the population who got stuck there. They are the most vulnerable, they are the sickest, they are the poorest, so we stay there. So far, we under the agreement of the Israeli army, but the situation is getting really tense and we don't know how long we'll be able to stay there.
Medics in southern Gaza, where residents of Gaza City have been told to go, are warning of collapse there in the whole system, including the medical system. What are they up against right now?
Well, in the south, all the hospitals are overwhelmed. You have 2 patients per bed, and they are not treated very properly. They are treated too fast because you need to discharge them. So to be able to admit the new patients that are coming from last night's bombing or mass shooting. So the situation is already very bad, and the Israeli army is planning to send by force the same amount of population to the south. So we're facing a real disaster in terms of provision of healthcare. It's already very bad at the moment. If that movement of population happens in the coming days, in the coming weeks, it will destroy the health system.
Israel controls much of the Gaza Strip. It's difficult to move around there with any freedom. How much access do your teams actually get for reaching those that are in need?
Well, at the moment, I mentioned the access we have with the army clearance. This is decreasing. Most of the movement we ask for at the moment have been denied by the Israeli army. We still do some because we have work to do. We have healthcare to provide. We have water to distribute, but they are not covered anymore by the Israeli army. So the main risk is just being at the wrong place at the wrong time. The number of shelling has increased dramatically. There is no way to tell where next one is going to be.
What, in your opinion, should the international community do? What steps should they take right now to prevent further catastrophe in Gaza?
Well, the objective should be a ceasefire, an immediate ceasefire. There is no way that this military operation ends up in anything else but a disaster. A disaster even worse than what we've been seeing in Gaza for the past 2 years. Now, I don't know how the international community can reach that objective, but that's clearly what they should be trying to do. In the meantime, they can also open their doors, open their hospital doors to the many people sick in Gaza City and in the rest of the Gaza Strip who cannot find a proper health care. Some of them have been wounded, some of them have cancers, some of them have a very complicated disease where the health system in Gaza will not be able to take care of it. They need to be admitted in safe countries with a good health system. The number by WHO of those very sick people is 15,000 at the moment. It's not such a big number to be accepted by the rich countries.
Jean-Guy Vataux, head of mission for Gaza from Doctors Without Borders. Thank you very much for speaking with us today.
Thank you.